All right, welcome to this episode of the Better Podcast. I'm Nicholas Ayers.
I'm Preston Schmidley.
And today we have on who I consider to be the greatest insurance agent in the country. I'm a big fan of hers. If you know her, you either love her or you hate her, and I think she likes it that way. We have on Miss Aurora Mullet. We'll get to Aurora in just a second, right after this intro.
Flavor.
Yeah, boy!
Hey, yo, check 1, 2. This is Flavor Flav in the building for the Better Agency. Nicholas wants everyone to know how they need to listen to the truth that Nick and Preston are giving them. Flavor Flav's got y'all out right now. You heard me? So hold it down and keep making it a better agency. Alright?
All right. Again, we are welcomed today by, I should say we're joined today by Miss Aurora Mullet from, do you say, when you're talking to people outside of California, do you say Sacramento? What do you?
Yeah, basically Sacramento region.
Yeah. So I think Aurora, in my own opinion, I think she's the best. If I was not in insurance, I would get my insurance with her. I think she's that great. She just cares a lot. I think when we get into conversations about stuff like this, or we've had this off cameras, I think you care probably too much. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
Too much for great profitability. We'll throw that out there.
Yeah. I mean, but this is what's admirable is you're the type of agent that will go like the extra 5 miles to see if something, to try to solve something or try to help somebody. And that's hard to scale. I think that's what you mean by maybe profitability. Yep. It's just hard to, you can't clone yourself 10 times to do that. How do you try to balance all that?
Ooh, I've tried, like you said, I've tried to teach it to my business partner. I've tried to teach it to my agents, really to try to modify it and not die within it, because as well as trying to run the agency, I'm trying to fix the legislation within California, and I'm trying to help the community and give information out. So I get spread thin a lot. One of them, of course, as you know, is we're trying to bring better agency in. So a lot of the touches that I do can be limited. And we're doing I'm recording certain things that I'm doing also, which was a suggestion from you, which is to record what I do to allow my agents to watch it. Therefore, I'm not spending the time teaching them. I'm just doing my normal coursework.
Yeah. And I think the thing that is interesting about, it's easy to say, we work this many hours, we do this, but that's one thing when you're writing standard HO3s and cars, you write someone's 2005 Honda Civic that takes 5 minutes. You're working in probably one of the most, if not the most difficult personalized niches there is, especially in California, where it seems like every other house is denied for brush exposure. You're working in something that takes a lot of time. It's basically commercial. It's taking a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of attention. You can't just cookie cutter your way through that stuff. You've got to be really diligent and hyper focused on each individual risk. It's not just some standard, I can just write the auto insurance 250, 500, 100, we'll call it good. You're really spending your time on things that take a lot of time.
Yeah. And the errors and omissions portion of it, like the contracts and the types of policies that we work with, there's a lot of gaps in coverage, and there's a lot of ways to really screw customers over if you're not diligent in knowing what the contract reads. And that's a lot to keep track of. Even with the limited companies, every Lloyd's, contract is different. It's not like you can go Lloyd's over here at Amwins and then go Lloyd's GoGus and you're getting the same one. You're just not. And so keeping that up, and even trying to teach that to my agent that does a lot of the high fire stuff with me, it's incredibly difficult. And then also being the California Fair Plan trainer and trying to teach other agents across the state to do it properly.
I hope the Fair Plan is taking care of you. I hope I hope they're taking care of you, because the amount of, I would imagine that the amount of policies that come across your desk from people who are in this situation, what percentage of those would you say are A, correct? Like, oh yeah, this is a well-written policy. And B, how do you kind of juggle? How do you juggle all of it?
I mean, we have agency standards, right? I mean, there's certain things that we just we won't write, we won't offer if we just know the contract's bad. So that's one way, is being able to recognize what's not only not good for yourself as an agency or for that customer, and being able to say, I'm just not going to do it. You can go down to farmers down the street and get screwed over. Like, it's just not going to happen here, right? But it's true, because when you say these policies that come across, I mean, we have agents that tell customers in this region that, oh, don't worry about it. Just insure your home for the value of the loan. They'll cut you a check. California Fair Plan will cut you a check when you lose your home, pay off your loan and walk away. And it's like, no, there's co-insurance clauses. There's actual cash value that comes into play. It's a replacement policy. So if that person doesn't replace the policy, they're not going to get policy limits.
What percentage of the policies in the accounts that come across your desk, not from like new purchases, but like people who are in these areas, that you would say are just really incorrect? Not just like subjectively bad, but like, oh, that's really bad.
I'd say at least 95% of policies that come to me. It is disheartening, and it's even harder to go, hey, I know you've been with this agent for 20 years, and I know that they gave you this policy, but here's why I won't broker this policy over unless I can do X, Y, and Z. And this is what the coverage does, and this is how it's going to protect you, and it's how it's going to protect me, and this is what I need you to do to your home to better get defensible space. And it's like they've never heard it. And when you explain the coverage, they're like, oh my God, no, of course I want to have coverage to live someplace if my home burns down. And agents are like, oh, that doesn't apply to you because you don't rent your home out, and fair rental value only applies to if you rent your home out.
What? Loss of use.
I know, but it is insane. Agents do not know the basic coverage and how it applies.
I don't even mess around with it. If anything's in California and if it can't be written with Travelers or ASI, it goes to Aurora. I'm not even gonna try it. I don't even want to.
So Aurora, I didn't know this. You actually work with the state of California to facilitate the Fair Plan?
No, so California Fair Plan, it's not a state program, but what has happened is because I'm trying to change the legislation that puts you in front of agencies like the California Fair Plan, different insurance companies. And so as we started saying like, hey, this is all, we keep seeing these errors as agents, we're coming across these errors, we need to do something. And so I agreed to be one of their basically Fair Plan trainers. So we do Zoom calls for agents across the state to go over changes, explain how the policy should be written, how you schedule other structures, how much fair rental value coverage you should have, things like that. So it is totally just volunteering my time. But so one of my friends asked me
because you got so much of it.
I know, but he said, do you feel like you have an abundance mindset? And it pisses me off every time somebody asks me that, because I'm like, as much as I do for not only you or the community or whatever, but abundance mindset to me is not, I'm okay if you come over and you screw me over on this policy, right? That's not abundance mindset. Like, I'm happy for you because you won that business. Abundance mindset for me is, how do you help everybody at one time? How do you make the industry better? How do you make the policies better?
Sure.
How do you offer up your time to make everybody in a better place at the end of it? And most people don't look at abundance mindset that way.
Well, go ahead.
Go for it, Nick.
Let's back. Let's back up here for a second.
Yeah.
So for the folks at home, you specialize in high risk, high exposure to brush properties in the state of California. Was that something that you woke up one day and you said, you know what? I'm going to start writing some high brush fire homes. How did I know, and I know where you're at, there's just a lot more of it around you. Was it just, how did you fall into this niche, or how did you wake up one day and say, yeah, I want to take on the most difficult home properties in California? I think that sounds like a really great idea.
We got typecast. I'll be honest. Like, I was always really good at the brush. I was a brush underwriter for a short period of time. I was in regions that I had to evaluate that brush risk. And so it became naturally. And when people would call for help, I worked very closely with the insurance companies, knew the contract, knew the guidelines, and just knew where to go. And so it became known within the real estate and the mortgage, like Aurora got this done, Aurora's doing this, send it to Aurora. And then before we knew it, I have people saying, oh, I didn't even know you wrote a regular homeowner's policy. I didn't know you did commercial. I didn't know you did this. So that's our campaign for this year, is to use, you know, better agency so that we can drip market everything else that we do, all the cross-selling, getting us out. You know, the Haggerty Girl is the other sector of it that we're really going to push through. COVID killed car shows, right? Like that whole segment of niche for me died through COVID. Like it was the smallest year that I've had in that niche. So it's, yeah, getting, I want to not be so typecast, but it'll always be something that we do. There's no way around it.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
I love being able to help people. It's frustrating, right? But it's frustrating because you in sense are becoming a counselor too, because people are calling and I'm going to lose my home and I've now lost my job and I can't pay $500 a year. And how do we scale down the coverage? It's the emotional taxing of it that I could do without on some days and just be able to help people. But overall, I mean, I love insurance. I love, especially with the position that I'm in, where I actually get to make it better with legislation and the people I've aligned myself with to be able to do that.
It's a lot of, you're doing a lot like that. And a lot of that is honestly, like I you know, and then I think this is wonderful, but it's like most people do things for the monetary gain, right? It's like the idea of legislative initiatives or managing a fair plan. The fair plan alone, I mean, I've watched how insurance agents treat continuing education credits. I can only imagine that it's like babysitting a bunch of kids that don't want to be in the room, trying to get that information into their heads. Bless your soul. Wow. That's not so, I mean, what are your goals with something like that? Like if you had it your way, I'd imagine you have a vision in the distance. So whether it's, you know, for the industry as a whole or yourself or your position in the industry, what do you see it? If you are successful or if this expenditure of your time is a victory, what is the outcome to you?
You know, sadly, the outcome in a lot of cases is going to be lost revenue, because if I fix the problem, that means premiums go down. And unless I want to align myself with every known insurance company in the state and be able to have access, you're essentially going to lose business out the back door, right? Sure. There's going to be somebody that, you know, Mercury's going to pop back in and be like, hey, you know what, now we can offer $1,100 policies, things like that. So ultimately watching the Florida market do what it did. And I pulled out of Florida because I was like, I mean, this isn't my core and I don't want anything to do with it. And I don't want to watch that destruction or be part of that destruction. But when it came here, I said, well, I can't let this, you know, agents are out there right now and their mindset is grab these policies, grab these $5,000 homeowners policies. Let's do this. Let's monopolize on it. But none of them are coming to the table to make sure that this industry lasts in California. And we're on the brink of an implosion. When you talk to insurance companies, when you talk to the reinsurance companies, when I sit down with the, you know, federation and we're hearing everything that's happening, my mindset is, how is it that I'm one of 4 agents in this state that are going, my entire well-being is based off of California succeeding. And nobody's stepping up to do it. And I can't, the way my personality is, I can't just let that happen. I can't say I'm going to wait for an implosion. I'm going to make sure that my implosion doesn't happen.
Are you thinking that what happens in the Florida market, or what has happened in the Florida market with the separation of auto and home and all that stuff, and is that what you're trying to fight against happening in California? Do you feel like that's where it's headed?
It's absolutely headed. It's absolutely headed that way. I mean, we have major companies that are talking about pulling out of California altogether for property. which puts the burden onto the California Fair Plan. And we saw what happened when companies like Citizens or other companies out there get the burden of the business. It can only succeed and last for so long. And it's not only the insurance portion. We have major counties that the tax revenue from homes having to be decreased in sale prices to accommodate for insurance costs is having this domino effect into fire department funding and all the school fundings, all this stuff that's happening, and nobody's focusing on finding a solution for it. And so we're watching company like El Dorado County lost like $750,000 in funding for a small little section. Like, that's impactful for a small county like that. And that's happening all over the state.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah. And I would imagine that what inevitably happens is, there'll be places to find the business, and what it really does is it hurts the consumer, hurts the insured, because more often than not, they're going to get stuffed into policies even more so that don't fit them, aren't the right policies, aren't the right coverage, and it creates just a really horrible thing from soup to nuts for everybody.
Yeah, you have communities that can't rebuild because agents didn't know the policies. They didn't know the coverage. And unfortunately, we don't have agents that step up and go, you know what, that actually wasn't the California Fair Plan's fault. The Fair Plan's paying out exactly as the Fair Plan is meant to pay out. I screwed you over. I'm the one that forgot these endorsements. I'm the one that forgot this coverage. I'm the reason why your family cannot rebuild.
Interesting.
So talk to us about what you're doing on the legislation side.
So, it's everything from kind of what you guys are seeing, right? So the Wildfire Protection Act was the first portion that I helped a local supervisor with, just knowing what insurance companies would be willing to sign off on, how to structure it, how long the protection should be. And that's the one that is enacted right now that saves those zip codes for 1 year if they're around a fire. So that originally was supposed to also include grandfathering rights for seniors and people like that have been with insurance companies for 20 years, have always paid, have never had claims, and now they're being dropped because of the wildfire issue.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
That got axed at the Senate floor. It got restructured a bunch of times before it came out to what we got, but we still got about 4 of the asks in there, which was the 2 years, non-renewals, the rebuilds. And then the rest of it is really trying to get the legislation to enact different things for wildfire defense and home hardening and firewise communities, all of the things that the insurance companies say they need to enter back into the market, as well as removing the stop for insurance companies to be able to add reinsurance costs into their policies. Right now that's blocked, and we have to deregulate that, just like we have to deregulate Prop 103 for insurance companies to be able to come in these higher risk areas and say we need to take rate higher than the 6.9% because it's a state of emergency.
Question for you on that. You had mentioned you had things restructured when it got to the Senate floor. This is a part of insurance that I haven't specifically got to in my own career, but it is interesting to me. Did you find it to be disheartening? Did you find that something like, risk management or the concept of insurance, do you feel like those people are at all qualified to even make decisions with things like that?
No, and that's our battle right now. It's like with anything with legislation, you have the people who line the pockets of the people making the decisions. So if we say we need to create a bill that says if these homes have these features, right? Stucco, 2.5-hour burn rate, everything, hardboard siding, gutter guards, things like that, that will create credits on the insurance policies to bring it back in a respectable range for people. But what happens is these legislatures do not have any knowledge about what constitutes a hardened home. So instead we have these big, large corporations that are coming to legislation saying, hey, this paint that I sell, that will prevent a home from being, catching fire. And therefore they go, hey, that's great. We get to feel good. We get to put this in here and try to put in legislation. And we're like, that's a 2-year fix. It doesn't I mean, like after a year, really, it becomes susceptible. So it's fighting the greasing of the pockets that happens naturally in government to keep everybody focused on the things that will actually heal the industry.
Yeah, it's welcome to Corruptifornia.
It's bad. We had a lot of local legislation, and we went and knocked on their doors at the beginning of this, and it was like, but what's the benefit for me? It maddened me because I'm sitting across from these people going,
you see how the sausage gets made.
Yeah, like these are your constituents. It matters to you because you're bound to take care of them. That is your job. That's your one single thing that we voted you in for.
You know, it's interesting to me that, and I don't want to make this a political thing, but it's interesting to me that like politicians don't have a fiduciary responsibility to their citizens. Like if if they were treated to their citizens the same way we were treated to our clients, you know, it's mind blowing to me. Anyways.
Well, yeah, they don't make, you know, who makes the rules. Do you find what is your are you fighting this battle by yourself? Do you have other agents in California that are doing this with you?
No. So, I mean, I can sometimes go, you know, knock on my friends' doors and be like, hey, I need you for a minute. But really it's up here in this region. There's Phil Irwin, who actually, he's in our group and he is an agency owner, but he also during this process became the marketer for Fair Plan. He's the public information officer for Fair Plan, and him and I work together on this grassroots more than anybody. And then we have a legislative, what do you know, the people that go around and try to get their bill passed. What are they called?
Lobbyists?
Lobbyists, thank you. So she's a former lobbyist, so she understands that portion. And as we say, she's the filter of it, right? Because if we go and sit in front of a legislative, I'm gonna mouth off. It's just gonna be like, as soon as they piss me off, I'm gonna mouth off. And she's very good at, you know, we game plan ahead of time, and she does the talking. She's the one that deals with that side of it. And I tell her, hey, this is what we need. This is the ask that we have today. Who can we get on the legislative side on our sides for it?
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. I feel like the answer might sound obvious, but I just want to hear it verbalized. Why are you doing this? It seems like it's bigger than David versus Goliath. It's why do you wake up every morning, or what causes you to wake up in the morning and say, you know what, this is the battle I want to fight?
I think the simple answer is probably because nobody else is, but the emotional answer is as a single mom, I raised my kids in El Dorado County, and it was a choice to bring them someplace where I knew that the values were shared and they were going to have a chance of going to a school that didn't have stabbings every other day. But it was expensive. It's expensive to commute from El Dorado County. It's expensive for the PG&E. It's expensive for food. And I, like many families up there, just squeaked by every single day. It was but I knew what I wanted for my family. And that is the core communities that I'm trying to help right now. Is I don't want these people, it breaks my heart when they talk about having to leave this home that they built for their family, or their kid has to give up, basketball, which might be their only chance into college, because they have to choose between that and paying their insurance bill. That's now gone from $50 to $500 a month. So wow. That's what drives me, is knowing that if I can just help some families. That's why I do as much business as I do with referring people out, right? I'm not going to go and say, I can sell you this $400 a month policy, but I know State Farm's going to do it for $1,200. Go to State Farm, go to this company. Like, I stay on top of everything because I can't sit back and watch these communities crumble, and that's where they're headed.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very admirable, because I think a lot of people, well, it's not, I think, I mean, if it wasn't the case, you'd have a lot more people working with you. I think the easiest thing is to just say, it's just the way it is. You know what? It's just the way it is. And I don't like it, but it's, what am I going to do? What good can I do? How can I fix it? And what I like is that this is why I think that, I think it's partially tongue in cheek, but I think it's partially true. I don't know of another insurance agent that I've ever met that I think cares about her community, cares about her clients, cares about the mission, cares about doing the right thing. And I think that's what sets you apart from everybody else. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's really, really, really cool. I think it's really cool.
Thank you.
So. Well, with that being said, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Aurora, how can people connect with you if they have questions? Here's what I'll say to any insurance agent listening. If you have, are you only licensed in where are you licensed, Aurora?
Ooh, well, we're all in all of the Western states, so the 10 connecting Western states, and then we just branched out into Wyoming and Ohio, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We're taking, but that's more for the Hagerty side. That
Sure.
we're going 45 states for that side.
Here's what I'd say: if you're looking, if you are an insurance agent, you run into brush issues. You run into, not only is she a great resource, what I would tell you to do, if you can't do it, let her write it. Let her do it. And not only will she do it right, she'll do it right, and that's the most important thing. And so she'll take care of you. She'll take care of the client. So if you're an insurance agent and you can't write brush, then just pass it along. It's the same thing I say about people with flood insurance. I say, just give it to Chris Green. Just don't even worry about it, you know? And so I think she's a great resource for our industry. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she'll break her own arm to help you out. So Aurora, thank you so much for joining us on the Better Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been awesome.